implants in every dream, and for premium subscribers doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly, with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Heils. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something tidal, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blighted idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. when I know too well it's open season. I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. No, what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book, and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close. Mother and baby on razor's edge. Don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping about a red. They divvy a shit little bit of bread. Miles away from that lady's ledge. Her senator waking safe and fed. Ain't got a paper to read in bed. Jerking them off as they count the dead. Gorillas in the mist, skin suits in the Senate. Water in the streets, chest deep like it's Venice. Water out a tap in Jackson comes blacker than resin. Black incidentally like most of its residents, which is why it isn't on your television, isn't on the lips of your president. Well, I'm admitting that as evidence. I've been fleshing out a case to be made for the testament. I don't know what our collateral count is, but doubt it is less than the estimate. You just show us a hospital, watch as we Dresden it. Our propaganda gets taken to heart, and you're scarfing it, like it or not. If you think that you aren't, I would urge you to pick that apart, cause you're drinking it, smoking it, driving it, dressed in it. We pay for it, pray to it, bathe in it, fill up the basin, and babies are blessed in it. Ask no questions, bask in the pestilence. See, honey, when the plague goes live, you'd be wise to invest in it. See, honey, when the plague goes live, just between you and I, that's an industry sign that they're all done testing it. And come to I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe?
Fate demanded I be singer of a new ballad about the candidate you wanted like a finger in your fruit salad, but were made to choke down. And never mind he didn't have supporters on the ground. Never mind a website that gave volunteers the runaround, and a platform, a policy that
Hey, what about you, eyeballs? What did you see?
it couldn't have been me, sir.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're
Who are these people?
We're back.
We're back.
We're back. We're back.
Of course, I come back sick.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, everybody.
Fantastic.
All right.
You were waiting to do that, weren't you?
Dude, I've got like soundboards ready to go. I've had it ready to go for like weeks. You know? Like
Yeah, well, and funny enough, you know
that you've been doing this a while. And I think I said this to you maybe a couple of days ago that I was like, I miss streaming.
Right?
Like in the midst of like it's hard doing this,
Yes.
but it's very hard. But yeah, but the idea of like not being able, I think for me it was like being told not to do something
Yes.
when I know I can do it,
It's like
which kind of pissed me off.
catch me
So it's like
outside, YouTube. Fuck it, what's wrong
something
with
like
you?
that. But yeah, YouTube gave us a strike for a video that I thought was good. YouTube didn't, so
Yeah.
they gave us a strike, our first one. So we just have to be, well, we have to be good anyway, but we have to be really good for the next few months. But yeah, we missed y'all.
Yay.
And we're excited to be back. But
Yep.
since we are back, other than me being sick, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I think we're both a little sick. Everyone's been kind of sick generally, you know, for a
Yeah.
minute. But we have some fresh stories for you. We also did a stream last week. We did it on the Rockfin and Rumble, and we will put those clips up. Those clips are already done, so you guys get those clips fresh once we put them up. But yeah, we brought stories this week. Trying to remember if there's anything we need to get to before the show. I think that's pretty much it.
No. Yeah, I don't think so. Or
Alright.
at least if Indy comes in
Yeah.
during the stream, he'll tell us if there's anything
Mm-hmm.
that we're missing. Other than the Rage Against the Machine rally is this Sunday. I know there's been a lot of people saying some things regarding it. Ultimately, and at this point, it's this weekend. If you're able to go, if you want to go, if you decide to go, that's on you. Really, you can't, like, it's happening, whatever anyone says. So if you choose to go. I will be there. I believe Crab will be there. Tara will be speaking. If you meet me there, say hi. I will admit I am a little shy in person compared to what you might see on Twitter and here. So if I kind of come off, like that's why. But also, it's still kind of weird for people to know me from this. So, but yeah, say hi, and all the things, and
do it.
Yeah,
just do it.
Not that hard. Just do it.
Yeah, not that hard. As long as you're nice, I'll talk to you.
Speaking of, you could share, like the stream, comment, do all the things. We always appreciate that. Trying to fight that algorithm is difficult work.
Funny enough, people were subbing to us even though we were in Twitter jail.
Who are you?
YouTube
jail.
The last week. Like a few of you did, but we really appreciate it.
Rick Solis trying to get us like identified by like the U.S. military. We can't have that many balloons in here, dog. We are not allowed to do that. But anyway, speaking of, let's get to our stories this week, Care Bear.
So the biggest story I think that's been going around for the last 2 weeks, but I think really took off last week, obviously the rail disaster in Ohio. I'm going to be talking about that. There's some bits that are really, really new that Reef managed to pull just before we went on stream. So I am going to talk about that. And then this actually is kind of a hold off from maybe 2 weeks ago, but I wanted to wait on this. So as you know, there was a major earthquake in Turkey and Syria a couple of weeks ago now, I believe. And from what I understand, it hasn't really gotten a lot of press. Or if it is, people are talking about Turkey, but not necessarily about Syria. I think everyone who's here knows why.
Yes.
So the article that I pulled actually kind of goes into a deep dive as to why, Syria is where it is, and the idea of the U.S. trying to play humanitarian in terms of, we'll send aid and help Syria is actually kind of bullshit. So we'll talk about that as well. And then what you got?
Mine are easy. Bam. UFOs. They're distractions. Snowden says so. And Craig Murray flees home, supposedly. We'll get into that. I'd like to get more information on this story, which I will do after we do this. It's very like initial thing. Because I haven't seen very many talk about what's happening with him. Over here at least. I messaged Gordon Dimmack and a few other UK guys, and we'll see what they say about it. But yeah, there's something about S&P emails that he might drop. And they're trying to keep him from doing that. So we'll get into it. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So, you know, like
Perfect.
we can get started.
All right. So yeah, as our top story, for tonight, is the derailment in Ohio. So this is going to be kind of a Frankenstein of a segment in terms of I'm pulling 3 different articles to try and make this into more succinct. And as I said, Reef just gave me some information that I pulled like half an hour ago. But the first part, come on, thank you, is from Common Dreams. So 2 of them are from Common Dreams. This first article is written by Kenny Standstill, where he writes, progressives demand Buttigieg act on rail safety amid toxic Ohio disaster. The Transportation Secretary's refusal to fortify freight train regulations and crack down on Norfolk Southern's only signals to the railroads that this type of incident will be tolerated, said one watchdog. And I apologize for my voice. But Kenny continues, progressives are demanding that U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg improve rail safety regulations in response to the unfolding public health disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, the site of a recent fiery train crash, and subsequent controlled release, in quotations, of toxic fumes that critics say was entirely avoidable. The Obama administration attempted to prevent dangerous derailments like the one in East Palestine by mandating better brake systems on freight trains. Jeff Hauser, executive director of the Revolving Door Project, said yesterday in a statement. But this effort was watered down thanks to corporate pressure, first by writing in many exemptions of the proposed rules, and then, under Trump, by repealing the requirement altogether. Recent reporting from The Lever revealed that Buttigieg's Department of Transportation has no intention of reinstating or strengthening the brake rule suspended under Trump, said Hauser. Additionally, The Lever reports that the train was not being regulated as a high-hazard flammable train, despite it clearly both being high-hazard and flammable. These types of failures to protect the public are invited by perpetual lax enforcement and laziness toward even getting back to the too low regulatory standards under Obama. Hold that thought with regards to the Lever article, because that's what actually Reef did pull. And we'll go more into that since there's more information that came out today by, unfortunately, David Sirota. But we will continue. Now, all eyes are on Secretary Buttigieg, he continued. For too long, he has been content to continue the legacy of his deregulatory predecessor, Elaine Chao, rather than immediately moving to reverse her legacy upon becoming secretary. Norfolk Southern's environmental disaster is the latest in a long string of corporate malfeasance committed right under the secretary's nose, Hauser observed, referring to the company that owns the derailed train. As I've warned before, corporations do not respect Buttigieg as a regulator. Norfolk Southern's environmental disaster is the latest in a long string of corporate malfeasance committed under the secretary's... Oh, actually, that's a repeat. I think that was actually the tweet. So never mind. Sorry. Knowing that Chow justified letting trains run without proper brakes because the safety requirement failed a so-called cost-benefit analysis, Hauser cautioned that this type of analysis is invariably weighed against fully accounting for the health and environmental benefits a regulation provides. Buttigieg should call out the break rule repeal for the horrendous decision it was, start working to implement a new rule, takes Norfolk Southern to task, and push back on corporations deciding how the DOT regulates them, he added. Anything short of that only signals to the railroads that this type of incident will be tolerated. Hauser was joined Tuesday by environmentalist Erin Brockovich, who tweeted, "The Biden administration needs to get more involved in this child derailment now. We're counting on you to break the chain of administration after administration to turn a blind eye," she added. "Step up now." Any
Okay.
thoughts on this before I continue?
I mean, Aaron Brockovich definitely, who has still been doing stuff kind of under the radar. No one follows her, at least on Substack and stuff.
I think she's actually was on Stask who.
Well, or that he was talking about it, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think no one's talking about this in the mainstream media that I've seen. So, but this is, you know, we've talked about extensively on How Did We Miss That in this show about train strikes that people have kept from happening. The hose be knowing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to this story, so
a lot to it, and we'll get more into it. But essentially, you know, this shouldn't be really a surprise to anyone, considering how, you know, given the pandemic, there's less workers, you know, deregulation, and we think that's a GOP problem that they tend to deregulate. Like, Democrats don't necessarily do anything to reinforce those deregulations at all. And I hate to say it, but this was bound to happen. And this continues to happen in light of what happened in Arizona. Was it Arizona or Texas? I think there was another derailment, or North Carolina. I think there was another derailment within the last couple of days. So I don't want to make the comparison of they weren't as big, but the idea that, you know, like, this is happening with toxic chemicals that are hazardous to humans and the environment, I think, you know, is a very big deal. But anyway, let's continue.
Hey, Joe with a $10 donation. Thanks, Joe. Welcome back. Really sorry about that. I mean, it's not your fault. It's YouTube's fault. I watched your video. I don't know what misinformation they were talking about because you're pulling their sources. It was like literally them. Yeah. Is what they said.
Yeah. You're good, Joe. We love you.
It happens. So, but, you know, they essentially told us
you are fake news.
Like we were fake news using their news. So, but they were. I've got so much.
You know, so it says a lot. Their news is fake. That they're calling it fake. So yeah.
But anyway, you got more to this?
I got a lot more to this. So if you zoom out. Okay. After Buttigieg made his first public statement on the East Palestine disaster on Monday, 10 days after dozens of train cars careened off the tracks and burst into flames, the Lever's David Sirota issued a reminder that the Transportation Secretary is actively considering an industry-backed proposal to further weaken the regulation of train tracking systems. Sirota also urged people to sign his outlet's open letter imploring Buttigieg to rectify the multiple regulatory failures that preceded this horrific situation, including exercises his authority to restore the self-derail rules guided by Trump at the behest of industry lobbyists. So, another carefully worded letter, Reef. Instead of actually doing something which I think would be a lot more effective.
Interesting how that works.
Right, but we'll talk about that later, because there's a lot of people that should be talking about the issue that I will mention, that I'm not hearing a lot about, even in independent media so far. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar wrote Monday night on social media that the freight train crash and ensuing chemical release will have a significant negative impact on the health and well-being of the residents for decades. We need a congressional inquiry and direct action from Pete Buttigieg to address this tragedy, added the progressive lawmaker. Following the February 11th derailment of a 150-car train carrying hazardous materials, described by an inter-union alliance of rail workers as the predictable result of Wall Street-backed policies that prioritize profits over safety, officials ordered emergency evacuations before releasing chemicals into a trench and burning them off to prevent a catastrophic explosion. Okay. It was already known that vinyl chloride of particular concern to state health officials because exposure to the volatile gas is associated with higher cancer risks had been released from several cars, and that the other dangerous toxins such as flogene, and hydrogen chloride were emitted in large plumes of smoke. However, citing a list of the derailed car contents that Norfolk Southern provided to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, ABC News reported Monday night that several more toxic substances were released into the air and soil following a crash that originally thought, including ethylene glycol monodual ether.
Yeah.
Science words. Oh boy.
Where's the where are we at? Hold on.
Alkylate and isobutylene, I think.
Yeah, so glycol monobutyl ether, ethyl hexyl acrylate, and isobutylene.
Okay. I got
sorry, my mother does
Science.
molecular. Yes, I'm good. We're good.
Science. I
Yeah.
actually failed chemistry in
Okay.
high school.
So did she, but whatever. So
I had a crappy teacher though, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
it's all
anyway.
just Greek roots. It's weird.
Yeah, Greek roots. Yeah.
Yeah.
As the outlet noted, contact with say that again.
Ethylhexyl acrylate,
Carcinogen can cause burning and irritation of the skin and eyes, and inhalation can irritate the nose and throat, causing shortness of breath and coughing, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Inhalation of isobutylene can cause dizziness and drowsiness as well, while exposure to ethylene glycol monobutyl ether can cause irritation in the eyes, skin, nose, and throat, as well as hematuria or blood in the urine, nervous system depression, headache, and vomiting, according to the CDC.
That sounds like fun.
Awful.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
The U.S. EPA said Monday night it has not yet detected any concerning levels of toxins in the air quality that can be attributed to the crash since the controlled burn was complete, ABC News reported. The agency continues to screen individual homes in close proximity to the site. Meanwhile, the Independent reported Tuesday that the Ohio EPA has confirmed the presence of chemicals, including butyl acylate, in the Ohio River Basin, potentially affecting up to 25 million people. I would argue more than that, at least eventually, but rather than spending money to upgrade safety and staffing, Norfolk Southern engaged in stock buybacks and laid off employees. There must be accountability. Contaminants reached the river from an initial spill caused by the derailment, but officials said they were in low enough level that the river diluted them and said that downriver communities would not be at risk, the outlet reported. Yeah, right.
Yeah, except they didn't realize the water cycle happens.
Right.
Like
the state, and we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Yes, because we're going to make an acid. Yeah,
right.
Yes. Yeah.
The state agency has been monitoring water quality throughout the region and has not found contaminant levels in any levels they've deemed concerning. Nevertheless, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has revealed that at least 3,500 fish have died in Columbiana County, home to East Palestine, since the derailment.
So have you watched HBO's Chernobyl doc?
No.
Okay, so there's the one of the things that happened at Chernobyl initially was that when they first measured the radioactive contaminants, right? The thing they used to measure it with, like the first thing they went to, was only rated to go up to like 7 Rutgens, right? Like it, which they were like well exceeding everywhere, right? Like, but because the little box could only read to that, they were like, oh no, it's fine, you know,
Right.
not realizing they had completely like voided the scale, you know.
Right.
Like that's very similar here, where it's like, oh no, everything's good, you know,
Right.
like.
Except as you said, and I remember this from elementary school, if you burn
Mhm.
chemicals like that into the atmosphere, eventually it's going to come down as
Yes, well, we have an
red rain.
alcohol, like we have an alcohol, we're introducing it to carbon, like we're gonna get like that ethanol or whatever, eco-butyl, like all these prefixes when you put them together start meaning things, you know. I'm trying to remember exactly what, because I wanted to go
In the
back.
chat, I'm just looking. He said, our dogs are still alive, so that's good, and we live 45 miles west of East Palestine. Let us know how you actually let us know how you're doing, Anthony, and especially like if there are any updates since you're
So
basically in the epicenter.
butyl
Like,
acrylate's like acrylic, right? But that LATE is the important
right.
bit. So when we're mixing that with the ethanol, that's like, yeah, we can make some real fun potions that
Right.
would definitely be poisonous. You
Right.
know. So anyway, sorry, I'm clicking too far.
No, that's fine. But anyway, let's continue for this.
Is this where we were at, or were we before it?
Okay, that's the next one. I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
As the full ecological fallout of the disaster continues to come into view, many of East Palestine's roughly 47,000 residents fear that the air and water in the rural town they have been told is safe to return to remains hazardous to their health. At least 2,000 residents have returned, however, due to large part to a lack of viable alternatives owing to their limited resources and incomes. Norfolk Sun, which reportedly record-breaking operating revenues of $12.7 billion in 2022, has offered to donate just $25,000 to help affected residents, amounting to roughly $5 per person. $5.
Yeah, you can get a foot long.
$5.
$5 foot long.
$5.
Oh, well, they don't even have those anymore, right? No more
No.
$5 foot longs.
No.
Yep.
Like, what is a person going to do with $5?
I mean,
In terms of potential chronic health issues.
yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. This will probably become a rant. I should have made this a rant. I didn't, but I'm beginning to see right now.
Mhm.
So, I'll get more into that later. The corporation announced a $10 billion stock buyback program last March and has consistently increased its dividend, rewarding shareholders while refusing to provide its workers with basic benefits such as paid sick leave. Rather than spending money to upgrade safety and staffing, Norfolk Southern engaged in stock buybacks and lay off employees. Representative Jim McGovern tweeted Tuesday. Union workers were ignored. The train went up in flames, and toxic chemicals are causing a colossal environmental catastrophe. There must be accountability.
Do you think Obama's going to show up and drink water?
No.
No?
No, I don't think I don't think he can do that same magic trick twice.
Come on, man.
Without
Like,
any repercussions of what he did in Flint. I don't think if he was smart, he wouldn't even try that, honestly. Or honestly, don't say shit. Like, him being silent about it, I think, I could appreciate him not saying anything. Because it'll come off as definitely disingenuous if he does, considering,
I mean, do you think
his
Biden shows up?
I would guess he would have to at some point.
Hmm.
The question is when.
And what terrible thing does he say while he's there?
Right.
But anyway,
But so I do want to get to this, which you sent me like an hour ago now.
yeah.
So this was, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll add this article to the description later. But this was written today. But several staff, of whom include David Sirota, reported that Buttigieg pretends he's powerless to reduce derailment risk. So he's basically saying, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
This isn't my fault. Facing pressure to act, America's chief rail regulator now insists he's constrained. He's not. And they continue. Facing pressure from lawmakers in his own party after a spat of train derailments, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg has now resorted to falsely suggesting that he doesn't have the power to compel the rail industry to upgrade its safety equipment and procedures. Wow. In a Twitter thread posted more than a week after Norfolk Southern's fiery train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, Buttigieg indicated that he cannot reinstate an Obama-enacted Trump repealed law requiring some trains carrying hazardous materials to replace their Civil War era braking systems with new electronically controlled pneumatic brake technology.
So that was just to back up a little bit that he cannot reinstate and Obama put this in, Trump repealed it, so like they were getting people, so like then they could put back the Civil War era braking. Okay.
So basically, so basically, he's going backwards. Sorry, excuse me.
I'm allergic to bullshit, I guess.
I guess.
But
then it's like, so basically, he's saying I can't upgrade.
Yes.
Don't have the power to upgrade train tracks, basically,
or brakes.
Right.
Except
because
he probably could.
Right.
Okay.
But we will continue. We're constrained by law on some areas of rail regulation, like the braking rule withdrawn by the Trump administration in 2018 because of a law passed in Congress in 2015, Buttigieg wrote. Okay. Rail law and regulatory experts interviewed by The Lever agreed that Buttigieg's transportation department can and should redo that analysis to allow for a reinstatement on the braking rule. The Federal Railroad Administration's mission is to promote rail safety, said John Rist, a retired railroad worker and former legislative director of the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers Union, referring to an agency within the Transportation Department. If they believe that ECP brakes are essential to rail safety, they could require ECP brakes on certain trains or whatever they want to do. Reich added that nothing prevents Buttigieg from using his existing rulemaking authority to expand the definition of a high hazardous flammable train to cover trains like the one in Ohio. Under the existing limited definition, the Ohio train, which was carrying 5 tanker cars of vinyl chloride, a Class 2 flammable gas and known carcinogen, was exempted from the classification's more stringent safety regulations. In 2019, after the Trump administration repealed the ECP brake rule, the NTSB urged the Transportation Department to require trains carrying liquefied natural gas to utilize some better braking technology. Meanwhile, Buttigieg's agency is currently considering a separate rule that would weaken brake testing standards.
Of course.
Secretary Buttigieg should call out the brake rule appeal for the horrendous decision it was starting to work to implement a new rule, take Norfolk Southern to task, and push back on corporations deciding how the Transportation Department regulates them, said Jeff Hauser of the Revolving Door Project, which tracks corporate influence on government. Anything short of that only signals to the railroads that this type of incident will be tolerated. This is not an acceptable message from the Secretary of Transportation.
Hmm.
I think that's it for that I pulled. And like I said, I will include that in the description later after the stream if you want to read that article in full. But two things, maybe one thing. Notice how even Omar and like everyone say, "Oh, you should repeal, you should stand up," like, they should be fucking calling him to resign at this point.
Right.
Like honestly, like, because and the idea that they're not kind of suggests like more bullshit. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, even for like Sorota, like, and he blocked me, so he's not going to see this. But the fact, like, a carefully worded letter to the administration basically saying, please, like, better your standards, I really think is just really like it's piss poor,
Right.
like, should be calling him to resign, but they won't because, and this is the thing that is going to be infuriating. Although I thought about this today, because Pete Buttigieg basically is a presidential nominee for all intents and purposes down the road. So obviously, like, he doesn't want to do anything to fuck up his connections with corporations so that they essentially will give him money, or like finance his campaign, whatever that is, so that makes sense in terms of that.
Right.
However, here's the thing with this, because I know certain people are going to be like, I know Crystal Ball was like, oh, he's basically done, like, given what happened to Southwest over the holiday season, like,
Let's
there's
grow
no
up.
way. Yeah. So, I remember her saying, basically Buttigieg's chance for president is done. I don't think so.
Grow up and get
You know.
serious.
I don't think he's done because, like, especially like if I would say at this point, like in the 2030s, would be likely that he could make a run if it comes to that. People are going, well, the wrong people are going to forget about this, and I could see, and I could imagine like mainstream media doing their job to rehabilitate him, and probably even now to kind of lessen the blow of what he did. Like they've already kind of done, with the Southwest debacle. Like no one's really talking about that anymore.
Right.
That kind of blew over like after the holidays. And so I can imagine like with this, like, yeah, we're going to talk about this for a while. I think especially with the long-term impact of this, but mainstream media hasn't mentioned anything of this at all. So I can't imagine him, I feel like his chances even thinking of running for president is still very much intact despite all of this. And it sucks that no one, I think especially like the progressives in Congress, are not necessarily calling this out, but more especially calling him out to resign at this point.
Ask them!
God.
Yeah.
We can do this circle jerk forever.
All right. You have video for us visual learners teach?
Yeah. So just in case you guys, well, we know, like, this is more serious than they're downplaying this to be. So do you remember where you got this?
Yeah, this was Gonzalo Lira posted it on Twitter.
Yeah. So this was, and I'm not sure who this guy is, but this was a TikTok video that I think kind of goes into depth of the implications of this cloud, as you can see, and like the long-term effects of this disaster is going to cause. And I would argue not even so much in the Ohio River Valley, I would argue probably the whole country eventually, given like this is based around river basins. So yeah, we'll just play it. if you don't mind
This
playing
hasn't
it.
been getting a lot of coverage, and the coverage that it has been getting hasn't been very good. So let's talk about the trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. East Palestine's about an hour north of Pittsburgh, almost halfway to Cleveland. Norfolk Southern has a rail line that goes right through town, and this derailment happened right on the edge outside of town on the border of PA and Ohio. Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastic that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form. Meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million. Average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where one train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have like really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. When looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. 1, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Oh. So basically, Misty, please.
Yeah, I can get you that. Un momento.
We're fucked.
Here we go.
Well, I think really, honestly, considering, as I said, it's not going to be just limited to the Ohio River Valley. It's going to be, in my mind, this is a country issue, because with that huge cloud of toxic gas.
How many pounds was it of liquid chlorine?
Over 1 million.
No, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah. So, that's falling down on us as acid rain right now.
Yes.
Or will
toxic
be.
Acid rain.
Right.
Not just even acid rain.
Right. So, and they're calling this a success when there are larger implications that we can't
Great success.
Right. So unfortunately that's the first part, and I probably sorry for making this kind of long, but fuck Norfolk 7, fuck Buttigieg. I want to actually get to how the people feel on the ground about this. So because we're about people and not about the politicians here. So the next article that I'm going to read the next article that I want to read also from Collin Reef is from Jake Johnson. Oh, go back a second. Where residents are saying, I don't want to take my kids back to that. None of us have the money to completely start over somewhere, said one resident. We're not going to have a choice but to take our children back to that place, and it's not fair. I agree. So Jake reports, residents of East Palestine, Ohio are forcing a mistrust of officials after a 150-car train carrying hazardous materials, including vinyl chloride, crashed in a small town, prompting emergency evacuations and a controlled release of chemicals into the air to prevent a catastrophic explosion. Norfolk Southern, the company that owns the derailed train, has insisted that public health is not at risk, a sentiment echoed by local authorities. Just 5 days after the fiery crash, top officials, including Ohio Republican Governor Mike DeWine, effectively gave the all clear, telling residents they can safely return home. Many, lacking viable alternatives due to their limited resources and incomes, have done just that, despite lingering fears of the impacts that the train crash had subsequent unleashing of toxic gases into the atmosphere may have had on their town. Some have reported some chemical odors and unsettling sights, such as a stream blackened by substances released from the train and dead fish. I don't want to take my kids back to that, one East Palestine resident told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. None of us have the money to completely start over somewhere. We're not going to have a choice but to take our children back to that place, and it's not fair. On Sunday, the U.S. EPA published a document from Norfolk Southern that lists the cars involved in the derailment and the materials they contained at the time of the crash, which rail workers say was an entirely predictable consequence of Wall Street-backed policy decisions and company moves that have sacrificed safety for profit. Vinyl chloride, which 5 of the Norfolk Southern car trains were carrying, has garnered particular concern given its link to cancer. The Associated Press noted that the controlled burn of chemicals following the crash spilled phosgene and hydrogen chloride into the air. Phosgene is a highly toxic colorless gas with a strong odor that can cause vomiting and breathing trouble and was used as a weapon in World War I, the outlet reported. If there were toxic chemicals being released in a wealthy suburban area, there would be outrage. Damn right. The EPA said it is still monitoring local air and water and conducting screenings in individual homes. Norfolk Southern, which has offered a mere $25,000 donation to help affected residents, which again, as we said, amounts to about $5 per person, claims in a FAQ posted to its website that vinyl chloride and other substances associated with the derailment exist in the air as vapor, evaporate quickly, and do not absorb into household material. Since when they have the authority to say that?
Yeah, I mean that's.
They should be the ones saying that.
Yes, but they don't understand. I mean, like they don't get it. They didn't talk to the right people.
Right.
Know?
And again, it's not a matter of, yeah, that might be true, but again, long-term effects.
Right.
In terms of, again, acid rain. In terms of immediate, just as far as people breathing or whatever else.
Right. So, like poison cloud.
Right.
But yet,
it is
turning
not
on your propane fucking is bad, you know?
Yeah. It is not necessary to undertake any special cleaning of household items or air, and any odors present in indoor air will dissipate. Oh, God. And the company, which announced a $10 million stock buyback program last March. Despite assurances from Norfolk Southern, the Washington Post reported that residents returning to homes in a neighboring Pennsylvania town were advised by state officials to open their windows, turn on fans, and wipe down all surfaces with diluted bleach.
Yeah, completely now make it not airtight. Open all the windows, let it all in.
One resident told the Post that her family experienced headaches and nausea in the wake of the derailment. She expressed concerns that local officials are suppressing information about the health consequences of the crash and the release of chemicals, which sent an alarming plume of dark smoke into the air. I've watched every news conference and I haven't heard anything that makes me think that this is a data-driven decision, the resident said of claims that it's safe to return to East Palestine. We don't feel like we have a whole lot of information. Another person told the Post that he and his wife aren't planning to go back to their home, which is near the train track. The amount of chemicals that was spilled and burned don't simply just go away, he said. I don't believe there is any way to know the full effect until enough time passes, and that just isn't worth the risk. Others have questioned officials' focus on the 1-mile radius surrounding the train trash, worrying that toxic substances could have drifted much further through the air and waterways. There was no wall in the sky. There was no wall in the waterways. It's definitely floating in the airways, whatever direction it's gone in, and on waterways as well, one resident told a local news outlet. I just have concern for the water in general, horses, and people alike. There had to be quite a concentration in our smaller local smaller waterways that's actually making an impact on the larger waterway of the Ohio River, and probably a lot more than that. So obviously, I got a lot of concerns for the people locally, not for now, but in the future. In the 10 days after the derailment, observers have lamented the lack of media attention the situation in East Palestine has garnered relative to other recent stories, which I think you're going to talk about next segment, including the U.S. military's downing a centerful of unidentified objects over the past week. Oh, so I'll back up a bit. Actually, you know what? No, let's do this, because this is why we're not hearing anything from mainstream media. So you sent me this tweet by Robbie Slowick. BlackRock and Vanguard own about 12% of Norfolk Southern, so we don't need to wonder why the media is ignoring the train catastrophe.
Yep.
BlackRock and Vanguard are two of the big three. Every industry is clumping massive fund asset management firms. The third, State Street, is owned by BlackRock, whose largest shareholder is Vanguard. Together, BlackRock and Vanguard own 18% of Fox, 16% of CBS, and therefore also of 60 Minutes, 13% of Comcast, which owns NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and the Sky Media Group, 12% of CNN, 12% of Disney, which owns ABC and 538, between 10 and 14% of Gannett, which owns more than 250 Gannett daily newspapers plus USA Today, 10% of the Sinclair local television news, which controls 72% of U.S. households' local TV, and large unspecified chunk of Graham Media Group, which owns Slate and Foreign Policy.
Yeah.
That's why you're not going to hear more about this other than
Mm-hmm.
and then other people who have decided to share this. So, any thoughts before I go off on a tangent?
No, not really. Seems about right. Also, the fact that this is happening. No, I'm not sure if it's just being publicized more, right? But there's been like 4 or 5, I think I've seen at least 3 so far of like other derailments, all with some chemical problem.
Yeah. Right.
So, which is that's not a great coincidence, but anyway, you had a tangent, you said?
I do, because actually, before I go into that tangent, I go back one slide, forward one. Here we go. And can you zoom in, please?
Yes.
So this is a tweet I found, I think on Monday, from Terrence Daniels. So this is kind of relates to, railroad workers, which again, no one's talking about.
Yeah.
Just so we are all clear, all the railroad workers that get sick from this will get 0 days of paid leave and a brand new bylaw that takes away their right to strike. And we talked about this maybe at least a couple of weeks ago, how the Supreme Court potentially can outlaw striking.
Yes.
Due to a case that's occurring right now. So some of the fastest legislation ever passed, not to defend workers' union rights, but to defend gutless corporate profits. Did we learn nothing from the 9/11 first responders? I'm actually going to get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
In 2023, it is both mind-blowing and completely predictable at the same time. The sad part is they will just raise the acceptable level of toxic chemicals and act shocked and confused about the skyrocketing cancer rates in the area. Probably just not the area, I think larger, in terms of
Yeah, water table.
jet water gateways, like within the Midwest, basically, I would
Mm-hmm.
argue. It will cost millions of dollars in lawsuits, and the workers' grandchildren might finally get the illusion of justice in small payout following an NDA agreement. Peabody Mining, rinse and repeat. Hashtag climate crisis, hashtag climate action.
Now,
So,
I do know of, before we head on, my father works in an industry, the towboating industry, right? And there's, he works some really hazardous chemicals. These chemicals specifically he's handled before, right? In larger quantities than that train could ever think of.
right.
Right? They are pushing barges that carry 3 or 4 or 5 train cars full of things like anhydrous ammonia and stuff like that. With the infrastructure that is failing in the United States, I guarantee you that's also going to be a massive problem. They're not unioned. They're completely quiet companies with billionaires at the top of them that you don't know about. You've never heard of. But they push massive amounts of profit.
Right.
So
I want to get to the 911 first responders for a second, but it relates to what I want to talk about to end this. So those of you, and I think this was a story last year, Jon Stewart, he got a lot of press regarding,
burn pits.
The
burn pits too, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, but he got a lot of attention last year because the first responders at 9/11, those who went in, after the towers and were doing their best to save people, obviously have got a lot of health issues since then. So basically, the government is taking care of those people who now have chronic illnesses due to the light of that.
Right.
Well, they were planning to cut that funding.
Of course.
So Jon Stewart had to go in. I think this was maybe the second time that he's had to do this. Like, he went into Congress and basically blasted those politicians, basically like, you need to not do that.
And then he started working on burn pits, and then he was given awards to Azov guys. But
right. So, and I said this back then, like, I really appreciate, obviously, like, for the whole thing, that made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But that to me was just kind of a reformist mentality of like, you need to do right by these people, which is true within that moment.
Mm-hmm.
What I wish Jon Stewart would have done was made the case for Medicare for all. And this is something that I have not noticed any progressive or squad members mentioning yet, if they're going to. Like, and I'll explain why. I know you guys are very smart. We've talked about this before. So a friend to the show, DJ Joe Nice, tweeted this out. And actually, I said this first, but he tweeted this morning. I clipped this. The train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio is an environmental health hazard. Local officials should immediately demand Medicare coverage prescribed by Section 1881A under the Social Security Act. There's precedence for this. See Libby, Montana in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So those of you who are new here, welcome.
Welcome.
Let me explain to you what this is. So I'm going to do the Marches for Medicare for All a favor here. Okay. Historical precedents in Libby, Montana. As part of the ACA. So keep in mind, this is Obamacare. Libby residents who were exposed to hazardous airborne asbestos from a vermiculite mine from the W.R. Grace Company were made eligible for free Medicare at the discretion of the Social Security Administration and the DHHS. It was then codified in Section 1881A of the SSA. The language of the statute refers to any individual subject to an environmental exposure. COVID-19 is an environmental hazard. I think this derailment obviously applies to. It's another. And so it's one thing to go back to Omar
Vermiculate,
for a second.
by the way.
Vermiculate. Thank
Yeah.
you. Again, science.
Yeah.
What's it good at science at school? Or chemistry. So here's my frustration in this. It's one thing not correctly, not going far enough in calling out Buttigieg for all of this, like, and just saying, oh, he needs to do more. No, he fucking should resign, you know, and that's what she should be calling for. But, you know, I read the article of what people are saying and how they're feeling in terms of, like, we can't go home and we don't have the money to go elsewhere, you know? So, like, really, if you're a progressive in office, you should be calling this out. You know, and more especially, like, this would be the prime case for Medicare for All, at least at minimum, like for the Ohio River, for residents in the Ohio River Valley. And the fact that they have not done that, you know, just so how much of a devil they are, really. Because
we're talking about these people?
Yes.
Okay.
I said this yesterday. Or Monday, if the squad were smart, they would demand that the residents of East Palestine, Ohio, I would argue the Ohio River Valley at this point directly get Medicare for All under emergency and second. This is what they should be pushing for at this point, and right now, not a word. You know, not a word. So this just kind of shows you, like, are the squad really doing what they're supposed to do? You know, in terms of, and the thing with living Montana, this is something that I think, especially with forced to vote and with COVID, that people were saying, this is a public health emergency. There's no reason why people should not be given emergency Medicare in the midst of a tragedy such as the pandemic, and right now, such as this. And the fact that that has not been mentioned by the squad at all, and I'm sure they know about this provision in the ACA. That's Obama put that in.
Obama.
So, you know, so the idea that, you know, like, it's very telling that they haven't said this. And I did put this in the slideshow, but I said in a tweet today, like, anyone who plans to go to a town hall where any politician, especially progressives, have a town hall or whatever, you should be asking them why this isn't happening. You should be asking why you're not trying to push for East Palestine residents and people within the Ohio River Valley to push for emergency Medicare, you know, because they're owed that right now. You know, actually, they're owed a lot more than that. They need to be evacuated, like what we did with Hurricane Katrina. They need to be evacuated, but also, like, think about in terms of, like, can you also, and I'm going off for a second, but can you imagine, like, these are Democrats trying to take care of, you know, essentially a environmental catastrophe.
Yes.
But then they're kind of going off and being like, oh, we need to do something as far as climate change and all this bullshit. Like, this doesn't give anyone, you know, confidence that they're serious about, like, climate change. You know, if they can't even handle this in a way that marks that they actually are responsible, unlike Republicans, you know? So, but yeah, I think we're going to follow this story because I'm sure that, I mean, like, the long-term implications of this are going to be disastrous that we won't necessarily know about for probably, like, years. But I think it's worth saying because look at what the politicians are saying and look at what they're not saying. And what they're not saying, I think, is very telling to what, you know, their hearts are really at, and who, you know, and who they really are about. I think is all I really got to say on that. So, but yeah, so yeah, long stream, but I think given that we've been away for over a week, you were owed that. So,
yep.
But we were talking while we in the independent media were talking about this. Mainstream media felt it was something more pressing that needed to be talked about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. King of Segways, Collin, leading me in to what they're trying to distract you with. And I tried to pull some extra stuff for this today too, because some stuff came out. Literally watching Jimmy today, had to grab stuff from it. So, but this is from RT, and I know many of you don't get to see that, so we'll cover it a bit. Granted, it's from RT. If we would like to have problems with that, you may. So Snowden labels UFO craze a distraction. Talk of aliens is intended to misdirect from real scandals, the NSA whistleblower says. So, the media frenzy over spy balloons and unidentified flying objects over North America is sadly not about first contact with extraterrestrials, but an engineered panic for political misdirection. NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden said on Monday, "It's not aliens. I wish it were aliens, but it's not aliens. It's just the old engineered panic, an attractive nuisance ensuring national security reporters get assigned to investigate balloon bullshit rather than budgets or bombings such as the Nord Stream," Snowden tweeted, which he's referencing award-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, publishing a story last week describing how the U.S. and Norway blew up the pipelines transporting Russian natural gas to Germany last September. The U.S. government denounced it as false. We'll be covering that this Sunday on How Do We Miss That? If people want to tune into that, I do believe. But yeah, U.S. government essentially told them that, you know,
Wrong. You are fake news.
Like, that's pretty much what they said. But over the next several days, the U.S. military began shooting down objects in the sky over North America. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said on Monday that the U.S. government still doesn't know who owns the 3 objects brought down over the weekend. White House Secretary Karen Jean-Pierre said there was no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity. However, I just Bush has got to be so happy. We're shooting these things out the sky. Like, anyway, he's got to be so happy. You know,
George Saga from Breaking Points is also kind of let over this too. Although I haven't.
The Hudson Institute probably also, you know, but like, you know, we got to worry about China. We got to worry about it. So, while authorities don't yet know what the objects are, they are not a threat. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told reporters on Monday they do not present a military threat to anyone on the ground. They do, however, present a risk to civilian aviation and potentially an intelligence collection threat, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Do you remember last week when we covered a Brett Wilkins article that'll be going up this week on the channel since we were in YouTube jail about hypersonic missiles being able to be fired from balloons? Yes? Okay.
Yes, and you showed me that crazy.
Oh, the drone swarms? Oh yeah, that's great. You were like shocked. You had shocked face the whole time, and it was brilliant. So Austin also said that the 3 objects were different from the Chinese spy balloon the U.S. shot down over South Carolina last week. The aerostat, which Beijing described as a weather balloon blown off course by the winds, had passed over most of the continental U.S. before it was destroyed by an F-22 fighter jet. Care Bear, do you remember when this started happening and people worried about the balloon? Do you remember there was a image that went up online of all the possible balloon flight path locations from American air bases to China? Like all those little American air bases and American army bases right around. Okay. Do you think any of them spotted the balloon as it traveled across said Atlantic Ocean? Was that what it was? Which ocean was it? Pacific? I guess.
Pacific. Yeah.
Will
make sense.
They definitely. I found out today that they definitely Monte covered it. They definitely knew from the beginning where it was going. They watched it go to Hawaii. They watched it, then a windstorm push it up north. Like, they knew about it the whole time.
Right.
You know? So, not only are they lying, they are double dog lying. Like, like, anyway.
But it makes sense given this derailment, which honestly was the much bigger story. And honestly, like, I've been kind of out of, I think, well, with our strike, but then, like, just life, I've been kind of out of the news cycle for at least a couple of weeks. Honestly, the fact that this happened, I need breaks because it's just too much. Probably
Speaking of
just
which, has Greta showed up? The thing we covered earlier? No, right?
No, but she has a book out.
That makes sense. You mean?
We saw that when we were prepping last night, and I told you that, like, she has a book.
Yeah, that's good for that. We wish we had thought of that when we did the story. Editors, edit that in to put that at the end of. Okay, thanks. Editors are totally not going to do that. Fanto's like, yeah, fuck you. Anyway, so I've got Caitlin Johnstone here, right? She's bringing some information. This is the WAPO, right? So U.S. officials now say Chinese spy balloon flew over the U.S. accidentally. The Washington Post has a weird new article saying that the Chinese spy balloon what we've been hearing about was never intended for a surveillance mission over North America at all. So just saying. So here's what she's pulling from the WAPO. By the time a Chinese spy balloon crossed into American airspace late last month, U.S. military and intelligence agencies had been tracking it for nearly a week, watching as it lifted off from its home base on Hainan Island near China's south coast. They watched it take off. U.S. monitors watched as the balloon settled into a flight path that appeared to have taken it over the U.S. territory of Guam. But somewhere along that easterly route, the craft took an unexpected northern turn, according to several U.S. officials, who said that the analysts are now examining the possibility that China didn't intend to, quote, penetrate the American heartland with their airborne surveillance device. The balloon floated over Alaska's Aleutian Islands, thousands of miles away from Guam, then drifted over Canada, where it encountered strong winds that appear to have pushed the balloon south into the continental United States, the officials said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to describe sensitive intelligence. So, yeah. They knew about it the whole time? Like, we're putting dots together, people. I'm just saying. So, in a recent article titled Media Spy Balloon Obsession, A Gift to China Hawks, Fair.org's Julianne Chwitten documents the ways the Western media have been committing journalistic malpractice with their obedient regurgitation of U.S. government slogans about a Chinese spy balloon, despite a complete lack of evidence for this claim. Despite this uncertainty, U.S. media has overwhelmingly interpreted the Pentagon's conjecture as fact. The New York Times reported that the United States has detected what it says is a Chinese surveillance balloon, only to call the device the spy balloon. Without attributive language within the same article, similar evolution happened to CNBC, where the description shifted from suspected Chinese spy balloon to simply Chinese spy balloon. The Guardian once bothered to place spy balloon in quotation marks, but soon abandoned that punctuation. Given that media had no proof of either explanation, it might stand to reason that outlets would give each possibility, spy balloon versus weather balloon, equal attention, yet media were far more interested in leading credence to the U.S.'s official narrative than to that of China. So, yay. Friend of the show, Fiorella Isabel from the Convo Couch says, what's really behind the latest UFO media frenzy? The truth is out there, and if you, quote, want to believe, understand the truth, is much more down to earth than the sensationalist headlines the U.S. and its media arm are pushing. Always ask what's being hidden and not being said. So she brings video with that. Go ahead.
No, it just, and I thought about this more, you know, like, again, we were talking about Southwest a little earlier, but I thought about this because, and I happened to be home, well, Jersey with my mom, over Christmas. So like, so I really wasn't, so I had a lot more time to watch local news, in like the New York metro area. So, and all they were basically pushing was Southwest. So it's just kind of like, it just made me think in terms of like, since they're pushing this so hard, what are they not talking about that I think is more of a bigger issue that, you know, like, that they should be saying, but are not, you know?
I don't know, the fact that we had an international act of war, probably, and we have a chemical spill in Ohio.
Right.
You know? So anyway, so she brings us some video.
America has turned into a real-life version of the X-Files, seeming to be in a collective meltdown after shooting down a number of unidentified flying objects from its skies over the past week. It has even had to downplay fears of an imminent alien invasion.
I just wanted to make sure we address this from the White House. I know there have been questions and concerns about this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns.
Washington dithered for days before shooting down a Chinese weather balloon. Yet it now seems to be trigger-happy as it blasts any object it sees as a potential threat. But the timing has aroused suspicion, coming soon after Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh alleged that the US blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. A former US intelligence whistleblower suggests that UFO sightings are often used as a distraction.
It's not aliens. I wish it were aliens, but it's not aliens. It's just the old engineered panic. An attractive nuisance ensuring national security reporters get assigned to investigate balloon bull rather than budgets or bombings, a la Nord Stream. Until next time.
And the developments have been greeted with mockery and skepticism.
Don't worry, just some alien friends of mine stopping by.
While a former FBI agent with top-level security clearance insists that the latest sightings could be part of a false flag alien invasion.
Military officials that are working with the cabal because they really need to get the fear up to get back on the map with this fake alien invasion. And we're going to see a lot more politicians start supporting the Tic Tacs and the UAPs.
Hersh has predictably been dismissed as a crank and the story of fantasy, but it is just the latest evidence that points the finger of suspicion at Washington, including comments from senior US officials and the president himself.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2.
Like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
During the 1950s and 1960s, a spate of UFOs was spotted over the US, leading to conspiracy theories about an imminent invasion. Roswell became a haven for conspiracy theorists and cranks, convinced that aliens were being experimented on there, with a trove of articles and mysterious footage circulating. Hundreds of Hollywood movies were made, in part to keep the US public fearful of the Soviet Union, with the UFO phenomena deeply rooted in anti-communism. Most infamously, panic ensued after a 1938 radio broadcast of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight.
But it later transpired that there was a simpler explanation for many of the unexplained phenomena. The Pentagon was conducting covert experiments with new military technology and spy planes. And the CIA admitted to planting fake stories to make people believe that they were UFOs.
Over half of all UFO reports from the late 1950s through the 1960s were accounted for by manned reconnaissance flights. This led the Air Force to make misleading and deceptive statements to the public in order to allay public fears and to protect an extraordinarily sensitive national security project.
One journalist claims that the latest UFO scare is a psyop aimed at softening up public support for increased military spending as part of a new Cold War against China and Russia.
The UFO stories all over corporate media are being pushed heavily by the U.S. military and spy agencies. Looking back at history, this looks like a psychological operations to hide new experimental technology and/or manufacture consent for increased military budgets and a new arms race with China-Russia. It is known that the U.S. has invested in, with then U.S. President Donald Trump's space fleet widely mocked at the time.
The Pentagon has admitted that it is expanding its space program.
They haven't gotten rid of that.
With the United States Space Force officially becoming the 6th branch of the U.S. military in December 2019. In other words, spying. But now the focus has pivoted to China, Washington's new global rival. Similar tactics are being deployed to scare the public and convince them that Beijing is a threat to the American way of life.
If I could communicate one thing to the American people from this unique vantage point, it is that the People's Republic of China poses the greatest threat to America today, and the greatest threat to democracy and freedom worldwide since World War II.
It is also gaining traction amongst gung-ho Republicans who have long baited US President Joe Biden and the Democrats for being weak on China. Some of them are predicting, even perhaps hoping for a war with China, which is of course surrounded by hundreds of US military bases. As for the UFOs, well, as Mulder and Scully would say, the truth is out there somewhere. Not in a galaxy far, far away, but closer to home.
Governments love to divert and confuse. And here we have big tech. We have these sock puppet media that is just connected and acting as a proxy through shadow government and invisible government, deep state, whatever you want to call it. It's a mishmash. It's a ball of string that's knotted up, and it's so complicated. But here's the best part. The best part is we just love to sit back and say, this is terrific. Is this a UFO? A balloon is not an alien craft. My God, what are we talking about? But then the other day, somebody used the term UFO. Now, that was a term of art. Why did they say that? They didn't say an unnamed craft. And then you have this extremely vague, this people in the military and White House spokesmen. Well, we're not saying it's a UFO. We're not really sure. Deliberately baiting people. But if you think this is diverting the American people and the media from subjects they don't care about in the first place, I could take you to Times Square, a block from here, and ask 1,000 people, do you know what Nord Stream 2 is? They'd say, who? Nord Stream. I've got all their albums. They don't know what you're talking about.
What's that award back there?
Wait, what?
It's like an Emmy? Tony?
People in the military.
No, that's a
Golden
That's
Globe?
not an Oscar. That's an Emmy.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's that guy to say? We can do math. I like that guy. I want to speak to that guy. The great hand talker, Lionel. How you doing, Lionel? Legal and media analyst who will probably analyze this video. But
we're not paying me for that.
Somebody can find him. Somebody can find them. We got people. But yeah, great hand talker. Like, talked with his hands a lot. I love that. So exciting. You know? Like, really draws you in. Just great. But anyway, I also wanted to point out, normally they stopped using the word UFO. Right? It was like, I think it was like UAP or something like that. Other acronym, acronym for UFO. UAPs. They were calling them UAPs, like unidentified aerial phenomena, I think is what they were using it as, if I'm not. So like now they're going back to like UFOs.
Right.
You know, so yeah, interesting little tidbit there. So remember how he was talking about how the US Space Force and stuff were like doing that? Now we're claiming China's doing that. Okay. So here's the perpetual shadow ban. I mean, I'm no expert in military intelligence, but if you want China to believe you that you also aren't spying on them with balloons, perhaps you should be a little more discreet than bragging about it to Politico like they did back in June. So, U.S. military's newest weapon against China and Russia, hot air. The Pentagon is quietly transitioning high-altitude balloon projects to the military service. So, yeah. An unmanned aerostat. Okay. U.S. rejects China's accusation we are not flying balloons over China. The assertion came after the U.S. shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon. They're going, yeah, but like you guys are. Like.
As we were doing it.
Right. It's like, what's the blame? Isn't that Goebbels? It's like blame the other person for what you're accused of doing. Right. So also to point out, we used a Sidewinder missile to shoot this weather balloon down. Okay. Weather balloon. It's definitely a weather balloon, not a Chinese fucking spy balloon. Okay. That's $450K a piece. They missed with the first one, Collin. They missed. So that's two. You sent two Sidewinders at $450. So that was a fucking $1 million fucking gender reveal party. That's what that was. Like, it's a boy. Like, anyway, so the Pentagon's reluctance to describe the objects or show any debris that may have been recovered has fueled speculation about their potential extraterrestrial origin. Space magnate Elon Musk joked about, quote, friends of mine stopping by. Meanwhile, opposition lawmakers have expressed frustration at the lack of official explanations by White House. Rand Paul sits on the Homeland Security Committee, demanded the Pentagon and the president tell us what they know and what they don't immediately. What in the world is going on? Wondering fellow Kentuckian and Senate Minority Leader McConnell on the Senate floor. The administration has still not been able to divulge any meaningful information about what was shot down, he said, asking if the radar sensitivity may have been turned up after the Chinese balloon incident. So, yeah, any thoughts, Collin?
It's just a whole hokum.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fucking.
I'm sure you guys would say, or at least.
Yeah.
They had us the first half. I'm not gonna lie.
They had us the first half. They were like aliens. We were like, oh, we like that show. We like that shit. You know, and then fucking
surprise, motherfucker.
It ain't fucking shit. It ain't shit.
Right.
So, you know, head on a swivel, people. Head on a swivel. Speaking of swivel, what we're also not covering in mainstream news. You brought some stuff.
I don't know. And people in the chat can. Oh, this great. Oh no, that's our thing. Not sure if this is, well, at minimum, I'm sure it's not being talked enough, or it's one-sided on what's happening in Turkey versus what is happening in Syria. So, but like I said, we had this on. I had wanted to talk about this for a while. Given that this happened a couple of weeks ago. but I wanted to see if Senpai, also known as Richard Medhurst, who is British Syrian, I wanted to see what he had to say on this before I reported on it. We are going to show a clip of his that talks about, I call this relief in Syria, because now, the U.S., as you know, we have sanctions in Syria right now, and given the earthquake that also affected Turkey, the U.S. is like, hey, yeah, we want to help you. And basically, as I said earlier in the show, it's basically a whole lot of bullshit. So I just wanted to see, and I think it's just as well that we kind of waited, because the article kind of goes into a deep dive in terms of, like why Syria is currently where it is as far as this embargo and how it affects aid. That is, well, people who need the aid that potentially is not going to get it in light of this earthquake. So, like I said, I want to show you, and this is a clip of Richie's stream when he talked about this, and then we're going to go into an article that gives a little more of a deep dive into the implications of what happened in Syria and its past, and how the West has been involved in a stronghold in the country. So if you want to go to that, let's see. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can go from here. Okay.
Joe Biden, he puts out a statement on Twitter saying he cares, right? He says here that I'm deeply saddened by the loss of life and devastation caused by the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. I've directed my team to continue to closely monitor the situation with Turkey, right? Not with Syria, with Turkey, and provide any and all needed assistance. Yeah, where's the assistance to Syria? I don't want anything from Joe Biden except for him to leave. Because it's very nice to say, oh, I'm so sad for the loss of life. No, you're not. You're really not. Because when Donald Trump left and you came, you kept all of his policies that are, all of these aggressive, offensive, bullyish tactics against Syria. You left them in place. Caesar Act sanctions are still there. Stealing the oil, still doing it. All of this hurts Syria, even without an earthquake. And now on top of it, in a situation like this where there's a disaster, it makes it even more difficult to deal with the disaster. So you don't care about the loss of life. You're a liar. You are a liar. If you cared, you would lift the sanctions. If you cared, you would stop stealing the oil. If you cared, you would pay back all of the damage you caused to the country, the destroyed infrastructure, the loss of life, the reparations, all of the oil that you stole. You would pay this back, and then you would leave. You would remove your troops and go home to the other side of the planet where you belong. There are several countries that have said they will help Syria. There's Algeria, Tunisia, Iraq, Lebanon, Russia, Iran, India. But when it comes to the Europeans, they said they'll help Turkey, but not Syria. All right. And you can see that in Biden's language as well, because Biden says, oh, we're going to monitor this closely with Turkey, but not with Syria. Just disregard, right, for human life. They just don't care. Syria would have been able to deal with this a little bit better had it not been subjected to 10 years of war, had it not been subject to sanctions. That's just a fact.
Okay. So as you guys know, Richie is British Syrian, so obviously he's very passionate about Syria. But like I said, I wanted to have his take. And by the way, Richie, you promised Indy and I that we could interview you. We would love to talk to you, especially about this issue or any issue you would like in regards to Middle East. Invitation's still open.
Notice me.
Yes, I will gladly admit that. But I have Indy and I have the video clips to prove that he said that he will. Anyway, miss you, Habibi. So anyway, let's do a deep dive on Syria, shall we? And hope I can do this some justice. So this article is from the Middle East Eye. This is actually the same organization that wrote about Maxwell Frost in terms of his backtracking his support of the Palestinian community in Orlando, Florida, in order to essentially be in Congress now. Dick. So Jonathan Cook writes, in Syria, the West's humanitarian claims crumble to dust. The U.S. said it wanted to free Syrians from a tyrant, that it was willing to let them die of cold and hunger. The truth, for the West, Syria is only about power. So, oh, it worked. So anyway, John reports, U.S. President Joe Biden's administration relented last Thursday and finally lifted sanctions on Syria. The change of policy came after 4 days of relentless and shocking footage from the disaster zone in southern Turkey and northern Syria, causing a 7.8 magnitude earthquake. It seems as if Washington felt it could no longer extend its embargo when tens of thousands of bodies were being exhumed from the rubble and millions more were struggling with cold, hunger, and injuries. The U.S. could not afford to look like the odd man out faced with a global wave of concern for the devastated populations of Syria and Turkey. Under the new exception, the Syrian government will be able to receive earthquake relief for 6 months, before the embargo locks back in. But no one should be fooled by this apparent change of heart. In the immediate aftermath of the earthquake, the State Department's first reaction was to double down on its policy. Spokesman Ned Price dismissed the possibility of lifting sanctions, arguing it would be counterproductive to reach out to a government that has brutalized its people for over the course of a dozen years now. Lies. The truth,
eternity later.
Basically, yeah. So the truth is that the sanctions regime imposed by the U.S. and its allies in Europe, Canada, and Australia was a criminal policy long before the earthquake struck. The brief and belated exception under international pressure does not fundamentally alter that picture. Western claims of a humanitarian intervention in the rich oil Middle East were always a lie. It just took an earthquake to make that crystal clear. Collective punishment. Sanctions are a form of collective punishment on the wider population. The West has been punishing Syrians for living under a government they did not elect, but one the U.S. is determined to bring down at all costs. The West embargo was imposed in parallel to a civil war, which rapidly transformed into a Western proxy war that ravaged most of the country. Sound familiar?
Yep.
The U.S. and its allies fueled and inflamed the war, sponsoring rebel groups, including jihadists, that ultimately failed to oust the government of Bashar al-Assad. Many of those extremist groups flooded in from neighboring countries, where they had been sucked into the vacuum left in the wake of the West's earlier humanitarian regime overthrow operations. To avoid the fighting, many millions of Syrians were forced to flee their homes, resulting in endemic poverty and malnutrition. Even as the fighting abated, Syria's economy continued to sink, not only because of Western sanctions, but because the U.S. and others had seized Syria's oil fields and its best agricultural lands. So remember when Trump admitted on camera that the only reason why they were in Syria was because of the oil?
Yes.
Yeah. This entire man-made catastrophe preceded and compounded last week's earthquake. Already destitute, hungry, and isolated, Syrians now have to cope with further calamity. Ghoulish policy. The supposed logic of the West's decade-long policy to incinerate Syria, fashioned to a template Washington regularly rolls out against official enemies, was simple. Desperate Syrians would be incentivized to rise up against their leaders in the hope of better things. But the project visibly failed, just as it had done so often before in official enemy states such as Cuba and Iran. Nonetheless, the program of suffering continued to be enforced in the name of humanitarianism. When Syria was hit with a 7.8 magnitude earthquake last week, Washington's insistence that the sanctions remain in place shifted the policy from the simple inhumane to the positively ghoulish. But rather than assume U.S. benevolence for temporarily lifting sanctions, the focus should be on why they were there in the first place.
Google's upset with you?
Okay. My phone... So my phone decided to talk to me in Siri, so I'm not sure why. Wait, so where was I? Oh yeah, so the logic of the West's position was this. Lifting sanctions requires recognizing the Assad government, which in turn would be an admission of defeat in the battle to unseat him. Protecting the collective ego of Washington officials has taken precedence over the protracted torment of millions of Syrians. That in itself gives the lie to any pretense that, in their fight to topple the Assad government, the US and Europe never really cared about the Syrian people.
Bruh.
It also offers a revealing counterpoint to Ukraine's treatment. Apparently, no price is to be spared to save the European-looking Ukrainians from Russian invasion, even if it risks a nuclear confrontation. But darker-skinned Syrians will be abandoned to their fate as soon as crumbling masonry is no longer on our TV screens. When did this kind of racist discrimination qualify as humanitarianism? No, it isn't compassion motivating the West in arming Ukraine, any more than earlier it was compassion motivating the West in sponsoring a Syrian opposition that quickly came to be dominated by the very groups the West labeled as terrorists elsewhere.
Shame.
Battle for supremacy. The West's supposed humanitarian instincts can only be understood by digging deeper, much deeper, helping Ukrainians by arming them with tanks and jets while depriving Syrians of barren essentials are positions quite as opposed as they first appear. The inconsistency doesn't even qualify as a double standard viewed from Western capitals. Both policies advance the same goal, and one that has nothing to do with the welfare of ordinary Ukrainians or Syrians. That goal is Western supremacy. And more or less visible in the background in both cases is the very same official enemy the West wants to see decisively weakened, Russia. The Syrian government has been one of the last in the Middle East to stand with Russia, including by giving the Russian Navy access to the Mediterranean via the Syrian port at Tarsus. That was one of the chief reasons why the West was so keen to see Assad's government smashed, and why Moscow propped up Damascus militarily against Western-backed rebels, frustrating those efforts. Ukraine, meanwhile, was gradually being transformed into an unofficial forward base for NATO on Russia's doorstep, a reason why Russia wished to see Kiev cowed and why the US is so keen to prop it up militarily. Punishing Syria isn't an ethical foreign policy. It is rationalized by viewing the world and its people through one lens only: how they can serve the naked interests of Western and, primarily, US power. As ever, the West is playing its colonial great game. Power intrigues to line up its geostrategic chess pieces in the most advantageous arrangement possible. And those interests include global military dominance and control over key financial resources like oil. Any thoughts so far?
No. Honestly, like, I mean, it's just kind of the same shit we've been dealing with. More of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, Richie has said this a lot. I think through many streams, but I really appreciated this article being very concise and very succinct in terms of what the real issues are and how essentially the West is playing a hand in like its dominance over Syria in terms of, you know, the sanctions that are in the country and why they're there. But then I think obviously making, you know, more currently the connection with Russia/Ukraine, but, you know, as Jonathan reports, you know, like Syria has a relationship, a good one, with Russia. So that just adds fuel to the fire in terms of, you know, wanting to force their hand on Syria, you know, especially more so now, in spite of this earthquake.
Yeah, they find themselves in a conundrum, essentially, from a Western standpoint. Like, you know, it's the fact that we've had these sanctions there forever that we're still not wanting to lift, but because this affects one of our enemies, you know, like
that, but it affects us in terms of the resources.
Yeah,
screw Russia. I think that's like secondary. I think primary is like money.
Yeah,
you know, like, we have to protect our money. So
I need that on the soundboard. I need Mr. Krabs going money. You know,
no, but it's to protect the oil, well, their oil reserves for our gain, essentially. So it's the guise of, oh, we want to help you, but we see this in Haiti too, in terms of, oh, we want to help you, but we want to take the shit away from you. So that's why we're really there. But anyway, let's move on. Supreme crime. As Syria struggles to deal with the earthquake, the first instinct of the US and its allies was not how to relieve the suffering of its people. It was to play a game of switch and bait. Damascus was blamed for failing to allow aid to reach some of the northern regions hardest, hit by the earthquake. These include areas still in rebel hands. Mark Lowcock, the former head of UN Humanitarian Affairs, complained, it is going to require Turkish acquiescence to get aid into those areas. It is unlikely the Syrian government will do much to help. The first shipment... First shipments arrived through a crossing from Turkey last Thursday. The Syrian government also approved the delivery of humanitarian aid to areas not under its control in the earthquake-hit northwest of the country. In response, a spokesman for the HTS military group, which controls much of Idlib, told Rutgers it would not allow aid in from government-held parts of Syria because we won't allow the regime to take advantage of the situation to show they are helping. Whatever the Western narrative, the reluctance to open up northern Syria to aid convoys isn't simply the result of bloody mindedness from Damascus. But whatever the Western narrative, the blame game over getting aid to northern Syria isn't simply the result of bloody mindedness from once again, that was a tweet. So sorry. Today, the Assad government may have secured a majority of Syrian territory, but is far from control of the Syrian nation. The U.S. has helped carve out a large autonomous northeast corner for the Kurdish population, and other chunks of the north are in the hands of an alliance of extremist groups dominated by al-Qaeda offshoots, as well as the remnants of the Islamic State IS group and Turkish-backed fighters. This fragmentation is proving a massive obstacle to the relief effort. By their nature, governments wish to assert sovereignty over the entire territory. But the Assad government has additional cause for concern. There are several dangers for it in letting the local al-Qaeda franchise and other rebel groups take any credit for dealing with the emergency. This isn't just a public relations battle. If al-Qaeda is seen to bring succor to desperate communities in northern Syria, they stand to win hearts and minds among ordinary Syrians and Arabs further afield. Allowing al-Qaeda to be in charge of the relief operations is a recipe for Damascus to lose authority with large sections of the local population. This could serve as a prelude to reviving Syria's civil war and plunge Syrians back into fighting and bloodshed. Evil of the whole. The point is that no blame can be attached to Assad and his government. It is that whatever Western orthodoxy proclaims, meddling by outside powers to topple governments is never likely to lead to humanitarian outcomes. That is true even if a regime overthrow operation can be achieved quickly, in contrast to the protracted impasse in Syria. It is largely for that reason that the Nuremberg trials of Nazi leaders after the Second World War declared aggression against another nation's sovereignty territory as the supreme international crime, and one that contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. Attacks on sovereign states lead to a loss of the glue that binds a populace together, however imperfectly, and produces its own, usually unpredictable, consequences. The West's 20-year occupation of Afghanistan created a crony state where corrupt local officials siphoned off U.S. funds meant for state building and served as puppets for regional warlords. The violent chaos unleashed by Washington paved the way for the Taliban's return. The U.S. and UK's 2003 invasion of Iraq and then the disbanding of the Iraqi police and army did not realize any of Washington's promises for freedom and democracy. Instead, it created a vacuum of authority that tore the country apart and led to Iran and extremist groups vying for power. The West's 2011 toppling of Muammar Gaddafi's government resulted in Libya becoming a country of slave markets, as well as a sanctuary for extremists and a conduit for arms trafficking to other conflict zones, such as Syria. Now we see in Syria the legacy once again of the West's humanitarianism. Debilitated by years of a proxy war and a Western sanctions regime, Damascus is far too fragile and fearful to risk ceding any of its residual powers to opponents. Those who will suffer once again, this time for the earthquake, are not governments in Washington, Europe's capitals, or Damascus. It will be ordinary Syrians, the very people the West claims it wants to save.
Nice.
Any final thoughts? I mean, it's kind of depressing, but
yeah, I mean, would be nice if they got something out of this, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so, but someone's gonna help them, and I don't think America's gonna like it. You know?
Right, and you know, and again, I wish, you know, if we have the ability to talk to Richie, that he'd be able to kind of share a little bit more about this and kind of know about this in depth. But I think in terms, and I never knew actually prior to reading this article that Syria has, I guess, somewhat of a good relationship with Russia that could affect things even more, especially in like Ukraine. So that's going to make,
well,
you know,
and with Iran helping Palestine is also part of that. So, and then you get into the whole BRICS alliance in South America. You know, you got Chinese buying lithium stuff there, and yep, looking like a good lineup for World War III.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's just like you have Ukraine, you have Syria now, you have Africa basically, you know, kind of being neutral. You have Brazil right now trying to be neutral, and then Russia, China. So it's just 4D chess in the worst possible way. You know,
I'm in danger.
Yeah. You know, in terms of like everything's kind of set up to just one. It's not going to take a whole lot at this point, given how volatile everything is. You know, in terms of our geopolitics, state of affairs are, worldwide. Just one thing, and it doesn't have to be big. It's just going to set off like a whole can of worms. I would say practically the global south first, followed by, like the major superpowers of like the West, and then Russia, China, and then, everyone else will just kind of be in the fallout of that, like in Latin America, right now. So, but yeah, it sucks. So, if anyone, and then it's like, I'm not sure, because I know just from personal experience, like when anyone would try to give like financial support to Richie, like it gets blocked. So it's like, I'm not even sure of like how mutual aid or anything that would be realistic to get there without, not assuring that it's going to get to the people that are going to
they've
need
been
it.
stopping
So,
GoFundMe's and stuff, and
so if anyone has the information that we're able to kind of link, let us know. But I just know, again, just from Richie's experience, it's very difficult, to like just to mention of Syria, it's just like, nope, we're blocking. So, but yeah, sad situation. But I think, as you said, I think this is just more chess in terms of impending doom for us eventually. So,
where's that?
You have.
Well,
have
I
one
have
more
some
story?
stuff about, one of the almost kind of good ones. So Craig Murray flees home. Dun, dun, dun.
So for those who do not know,
Yes.
can you please share with our fam who is Craig Murray?
Well, you see him in UN a lot, talking about Assange and things like that. That's him, right? Hopefully. Like, I kind of know him, like I definitely know the name, and I know he's important, and we'll get into why he's important in this case. So I'm sure somebody will tell me. So Alex Salmon's pal Craig Murray flees home amid police probe as he prepares to release, quote, explosive SMP emails. The former diplomat has claimed that he is now in the Outer Hebrides, and he has commissioned legal advice about how to release private emails which were hacked from SMP MP Stuart MacDonald. So SMP is Scottish. Look that up for me, please.
Sure.
But
no, that's not.
A key Alex Salmond ally has revealed that he has left his home as he prepares to release explosive FMP insider emails reportedly hacked from gaffe-prone MP Stuart MacDonald. We previously told how former diplomat Craig Murray claimed he had got his hands on private correspondence, which has been gleaned from the ex-SMP defense spokesman. Scottish National Police. Is that it?
Sounds right. I'll check. I'll confirm that, but that sounds right to me.
Okay. Yeah, because like SMP communication comes up first, right?
I think it's a trading term, actually. So
Scottish National Party.
Okay.
That's what it is. I was close.
Okay.
I was close. Yeah. Nationalist and Social Democratic Political Party, quote unquote. But anyway, the Glasgow South MP claimed last week that Russian hackers had used a sophisticated phishing scam to hack his email, so blamed it on Russia. Who does that sound like? I mean, Hillary's giving everyone playbooks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm just Wikipediaing other stuff. So Mr. Murray wrote in a blog that he had asked around and managed to get those emails, and then he would release any of them relating to political correspondence between members of the party. He then later claimed that he had been visited by cops a day after he announced this, who warned him to be aware that he may be committing a crime. What crime, Care Bear, would he be committing, you think?
Honestly, I have no clue, but
FBI, open up!
So now Mr. Murray has said that he has moved location to the Outer Hebrides, you think?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As he flees further recrimination from the establishment as he mulls over whether to publish the emails. Recrimination is the opposite of an affirmation. I know this because of Eddie Pepitone has a bit about it that people should go watch. The daily discrimination. Like, who do you think you are? Like, anyway. Very good.
This sounds like starts with a J.
Yes. Julian.
Last name starts with A.
Yes. Asanga.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good old Julian. He had hinted that they contain emails sent directly to and from Nicola Sturgeon that reveal the toxic relationship within the SNP's Westminster Party, where Mr. MacDonald is the minority of the Sturgeon loyalist. According to his social media accounts, Mr. Murray is currently seeking legal advice to find out whether publishing some of the content would be illegal or not. Writing on Twitter on Sunday night, he said, I am now happily in the Outer Hebrides. This makes it much harder to send the police to intimidate me because A, they will have to find me. B, I shall be too drunk to notice. Fucking man of the people right there. And then on Monday morning, he added, "This morning, lawyers are acting on my request to prepare a counsel's opinion on the legality of publishing those of Stuart McDonald's emails, which are in the public interest to be revealed. This may take a day or two." Mr. Murray has previously been jailed over blog posts that could have identified Alex Salmon's accusers and also lost a legal challenge against his prison sentence.
Just as a note, hold on. So just as a note, that outer Hebrides are basically islands off the coast of Scotland.
Yep.
So just to give you context, so that basically he's isolated himself now. So, and not to say they're not hard to get to, but I think depending on which island he is, are a little bit more, I would also argue, kind of maybe somewhat hazardous, given this is the North Sea in the dead of winter. So, so it's not exactly like pleasant in order to get there at this time of year, I would guess. So, but just to give you that context for folks in the chat.
Wasn't Murray jailed? God, I feel so bad for not remembering this.
I have no idea, honestly.
Because I don't know. He might have been one of those whistleblowers, but I can't remember. I'm sure someone's screaming at me. But anyway, Mr. Murray claimed that it would take a day or two for him to be able to publish the ones, right, that are in the public interest. He had blogged about the former First Minister's High Court trial for sex offenses in 2020, but was found guilty of contempt of court and jailed for 8 months. God, I should just read. Prosecutors claim that the articles contain details which could cause jigsaw identification of the women who made allegations against Mr. Salmond. Right? So, in his latest blog about having Mr. McDonald's emails, Mr. Murray claimed that it would take a day or two, right? So he adds, "I was not involved in obtaining the emails, and of course it follows I am not the only one with access to them. Others are safely outside the UK, so they may get published elsewhere. I have set out the very restrained way I intend to judge which are in the public interest. If the Sturgeon Goon Squad succeeds in removing me from the process, they may well not be the win they think it is. Finally, legality and morality are not the same. There's a great deal of outrage towards me from the do-nothing wing of the S&P about publishing private emails." Thoughts, Care Bear?
Yeah, sounds Assange-esque.
Yep.
All to say.
But I know me and Indy have covered Craig's writing before. You know, I think he's done some with Declassified and a few others. But yeah, I did ask around to some people to see if they wanted to get back. I know a few UK people, so that are like friends with Misty that like I think have worked with Craig in the past. So message them. We'll see how that goes. So, I mean, for the dude to risk, like, being jailed again for something,
right?
There's got to be some shit in there.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, you know, Scotland Yard doesn't come and scoop you up there, Craig. You know? Like, anyway. That's my story.
Yeah, we're done.
So we did it.
In 2 hours.
Yep.
Despite feeling a little long, but
that was easy.
Yep.
I would say easy considering that I have this cold, but yeah. Seemed pretty Good to be back.
Yep. Friday we should have a Tara stream. She thinks she's changing days on us. Might not be this week because of Rage Against the Machine Sunday, right?
Yeah, because she's she's
me and Indy were doing a How Did We Miss That Sunday, so we might cover that a little bit. And I know we were going to cover that Hirsch article, so keep an eye on that. You can always follow us at Gindini News on Twitter. You can find all the links in the description and at the indienews.network URL that's going that way. But yeah, anything else? Anything else I'm missing?
I will not be here next week.
Yes.
So
I should have a friend of the show, Oz, King of Kings from Roar Media. So Land of Oz 2 on Twitter. If you're not following him, go give him a shout out. You know, him and Shanda and Amber, they do the stuff over there. So
I'm going to be living it up in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, a February break. So that's where I'm going.
Nice.
I'll watch you guys, but I told Reef weeks ago I will not be in the condition where I should or would stream. Although I'm sure he would love to for
that would be
the
amazing.
hilarity of it, but I'll spare you of that. So I'm probably not going to be doing a whole lot anyway, to be quite honest. But yeah, I'm going to be out of town, and not to say I can't do it. Just given, I think I just need better equipment, honestly, because I can't stream on my work computer. It sucks.
Yeah, you're like, no, we're not doing that shit. So yeah, Oz will be here. So that'll be a good time.
Yeah, and look, probably over the next week or so, we'll probably do some extra stories for INN News. My guess is I'll probably do a few extra before I leave. So definitely I'll be on the lookout for that. There's one I think will premiere, I guess, tomorrow. Something that we wanted to do last week but couldn't upload it. But yeah,
definitely thank you all the people showing up tonight. Appreciate you. Share the stream. Hit the like
Please
button.
subscribe. I'll check. I think we might be literally a couple of people shy from 1,100 subs.
Nice.
So again, thank you guys for subbing to us during our strike. Actually, we are free short of 1,100 subs. So if you care to subscribe, if you care to share, let everyone know we're back. Be much appreciated. As we try to grow this network and this show. So thank you very much in advance. Appreciate you.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Good night. Have a good week.
Bye. Have a great time.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.